Good afternoon. Probably not maybe the most qualified person for this day they're having, but it's funny how if you're more than 100 miles away, you're considered an expert. So I'm just going to share a little bit about what our family's doing. So I guess conventional organic, we're doing both in non-parallel production, obviously. I guess for us, it wasn't so much a lifestyle change, the organic. It was more of a decision, like a business decision. So, but in saying that, I mean, I think it's a great place to raise a family. It's a safe environment. And I still do the spraying on the conventional side, not probably my favorite job, but it's nice to be able to run your hands through the grain or the corn on the organic side and you know, not have to worry about scrubbing down right after you do it. So that's just a quick map where we're from. Anybody that skis, you'll see Collingwood's over there along the water. We're just in between Meaford and Owen Sound, basically. So just a summary of our operation. It's a 5th generation farm. We're in 2700 heat unit. We're clay loam soils, no-till and conventional tillage. And like they said, about 1,000 acres of organic and conventional ground. We're currently milking 100 cows, and we have 50 beef cows. The beef cows are mainly, all our conventional wheat is the straw. We don't sell any straw. It's all composted through the cattle, and that's one of our main fertilizer requirements for the organic, is to have lots of compost. Our dairy is also liquid. And that's just a shot of us spreading some manure. All our ground it'll see, our organic ground will see at least 2,000 gallons the acre of liquid manure over the year. So just a brief history of how we got there. In the 90s, we were looking for something else to grow. We had a neighbor that was growing spelt at the time, was looking for people to grow on contract for him. We knew nothing about it, just that we thought we would try it. So we took 50 acres the first year out of hay production. I think it was after second cut maybe. We summer-falled it for, I don't know, 6 or 8 weeks probably. Dissed it, got everything nice and burned off by the sun, and then we planted the spelt in the fall, just like you'd plant wheat. And it actually turned out to be a very good venture that year. I think spelt was probably $3.75 a ton that year. And that's when barley was 110 maybe off the combine. So you were looking for something better because this wasn't working, and you had lots of straw. So we got along pretty well at that for the first couple of years. So we did that. Then we slowly moved into beans. We sort of learned our lesson pretty quick on beans. We didn't have the equipment line that we needed at the time. We were just sort of stumbling along as we went. And we were solid seeding beans. We'd get away with it for a year, then we'd have a weed problem. And there was probably a point there in the late 90s where it was sort of like, if we're going to do this, we got to get set up. Like, we've got to get the equipment. And we've got to, like, you can't expect not to spend the time and get the results. That's the big thing with organic. You got to be prepared to, you know, if you're stubborn, you'll make a good organic farmer. So over the next 14 years, we increased our acres of spelt and soys, which actually gave us more certified land as we went forward. 2004, we sort of had a family meeting on like I farm with my brothers, and my mom's also involved too. She keeps, she's kind of the mediator. If anybody farms with their family, you know what that's like. At the time, I guess we saw a niche market there. Somebody approached us about taking the dairy organic. Through the 90s, the early 2000s, there was always the world trade talks were going on. Anybody that's in supply management knows you just kind of cringed every time they went to the table because you never knew if something was going to get signed. Here we are today, nothing has, and you know, I'm grateful for that. I'm a supply management fan. But we thought, what if supply management went? Can we compete with just what we're doing on conventional milk? And we knew there was about a 20% premium available for organic milk, plus the premium on the organic crops. And we thought, you know what? We know how to do it, the conventional side now. Let's try it. Worst case, doesn't work, we go back. So in 2004, we decided to transition the herd. The learning curve was steep. especially on the dairy side. My brothers are great dairy guys. They actually look after the dairy. I do more of the crops. So that was the main, we had to go to a pasture system versus sort of we run a freestall barn. And I guess backing up a little bit too, we milked about 160 cows before we made the transition. So we actually sort of took a step back to come forward. So we sold some quota, sort of restructured, I guess you'd say, and that's how we made our transition. These are just, and Hugh or John, somebody had these before, but these were just charts we looked at before we came in to the organic, and you can't ignore those trend lines. Like, if I'm going into something, whether it's selling hockey sticks or whatever, I want to be the one that's on the climb, right? Whether, I don't care what you're doing, but because you know there's going to be a good demand for your product. So that's just a quick rotation of what a rotation is. We do have hay. Hay's a big part of our cropping just because of the cows, and corn, soys. Fall spelled if we can get it in time after soybeans. And we usually underseed in the spring with our alfalfa. And if we can't get fall crop in, we'll go with spring barley and get it in early. And our conventional side is mainly wheat and beans and the odd time canola. So it's like a non-parallel production. Fertilizer, our organic land gets all the liquid manure and dry compost. All our bedding packs are windrowed and turned. We are starting to use some granular blends. We've actually using some of Rogers this year for the first time. And so for instance, on our corn, our program would probably be, it's always alfalfa plowed down, 2,000 gallons of liquid manure, and probably 300 pounds of the 7-4-1. I still don't know the numbers, Roger. And on our conventional side, we buy in our needs for that. Our organic land is all within 1 to 3 miles of the dairy barn, and it's all on the land we own, which works out well because we know we don't have to worry about it getting taken out from underneath us. And we're also close to our manure, so it makes sense for spreading and keeping an eye on things. That's a picture just of last year. That was silage corn that we'd taken off. And that's some red clover we'd broadcast in on the corn before it canopied. Actually, we put it on with an ATV, so the corn was, I forget how high it was, probably up to your belly button maybe. Just the ATV was knocking it over, but not down. It's just an experiment to see. So that's in October. So as you can see, there was actually a pretty good catch of red clover, and we'll let that come on this spring until probably, well into May, and then we're actually going to try double cropping corn. I'm going to try it, see if it breaks the cycle. But that normally would be a soybean field next year. That's fall rye and oilseed radish. That's actually a plot that Omafra's doing. We're doing a study. We were one of the 10 sites, I think. It was a conventional study, but when Brian found out that we were actually organic, we decided to do it anyway, put it that way. Because I think this study will have more benefit to an organic farmer than will a conventional, because what it is that was a hay field in the summer. We summer-falled it, planted late August, and then we applied manure in the fall to some test strips. So basically what they're trying to find out, and then they soil sampled in November, I think it was. So basically nutrient capture, or whatever you want to call it. They're going to come back in, April or May and redo the soil samples to see whether that liquid manure got tied up in the radish and the rye. So, and this will be a cornfield this year, so we'll be disking that down when it gets, before it heads out. Actually, in that field now, the radish are actually dying off and sort of starting to rot, so they've been through the winter.
Is that rye or ryegrass?
Cereal rye, yeah. About 80 pounds and about 6 pounds of radish, which is maybe on the heavy side, but that was sort of what they, and that's just a picture of what they look like. Those are probably, should have a ruler beside them, they're probably about 8 inches. And that's a field of, that's another cover crop. That's a field of climbing peas, triticale, and forage barley. And that was put in after a barley crop, an organic barley crop. And we ended up taking that off for feed in the end because we were very dry in our area, so it ended up getting wrapped for the Holstein heifers. But normally that would have been left. So just quick, our milk all goes to organic meadow. And Roger would know this as well as anybody. I remember back when we first started growing stuff, spelt especially, if you didn't really have a market for it, you might have been out of luck because there wasn't a lot of guys out there at the time. And as the industry's growing, like leaps and bounds, like since we've been doing it, there are more brokers out there looking to buy crop. You know, there was some sour spots years ago with guys maybe not getting paid and stuff like that. That took them out of the industry pretty quick because nobody can go too long without getting paid. But now most of these guys are bonded grain brokers, and that's also helped the competition for your product. So the price has also been very good too. Yeah, and I guess just the feed grains, and the chicken guys will know this as well as anybody. We actually grow, the only thing we buy in on our farm is mineral. Everything else we grow, and we still sell corn and beans and usually spelt and some small grains if we have a little bit of grain left. But in 2009, when things went really sort of sideways, we noticed that the organic market did take a bit of a hit. There was no doubt about it. I think the main reason being that it's still a luxury item for a lot of families, whether it's here or in Europe or wherever. But if you have to cut your food bill somehow, that might be the first thing that you cut is, you know, maybe it's the organic chicken or or that $10 bag of milk. But as time has gone on here and things have sort of picked back up again, things have got very strong. And I think I was telling John at the back, I see it now with high conventional prices. Nobody really is in a big hurry to change, and you know, and maybe that's fine because at $6-7 corn, you can't complain too much. But in the meantime, some of these lines have grown, whether it's the milk, the chicken, or whatever. So the markets have grown, but the supply hasn't caught up yet. And you know, like I think old crop, I don't think anybody's really talked too much about old crop prices right now, but I think, well, Roger would know, corn is probably in that $14.
It's come back a bit. $13.50.
$13.50, $28 for beans.
Yep.
Yeah, somewhere in that range. So there's some pretty good margins out there still on organic commodities. So and spelts come up. We've actually just, yeah, our spelt just kind of went through Roger there a while ago last week, and we've actually sat on spelt for, this will be almost 3 years. We waited for the market to come back. It went from $700 to hardly getting a bid. And when it was $700, it's the same old thing. $700 spelt will fix $700 spelt because everybody grew it. So it's finally got back into the, that $500 range. And there are some organic elevators around, and if you don't have storage, there are ways of getting rid of your crop at harvest. You can forward contract normally now just like you could a conventional. And I just put that slide in. I think everybody's touched on it before, but you got to have storage. I'll just use last year for an example. I think the contract price maybe earlier in the season or at harvest was about $22 or $23, and by spring, we were at that $29 and $30. So on a bin of beans, you basically paid for your bin in a year, So, and the other thing is you may not have a market there at the time. And I just put storage isn't for $7 corn, it's for $3.25 corn. So, and that's just a picture of our beans from this year. Like, you got to be used to seeing a few weeds but that's our program. I'm not going to go over it because it's very similar to Rogers. We use the same type of equipment. We're on 30-inch rows just because that's where we're set up. And those beans were, you know, they were just a little over 40 bushel beans. That's just some corn ears. This is a picture of, we stopped this field. We needed it a little bit for silage. It's a grain field corn, or a field of grain corn. But you can see just on the bottom of the slide, the green, that's actually the red clover, because that corn's been off for a few weeks, and it's just gave it enough time to start to green up. So that'll be sort of our experiment for this spring to see how that comes on. That's a field of rye after corn silage. If we can get our roller built in time, we're kind of running out of time, but we were going to try the crimping idea. There's 15 acres there, and it was sort of going to be an experiment. We're going to no-till down with the air drill and see what happens on a solid seed with a mulch. Equipment, we've been through all that, but I'd say our key pieces for sure are the tined weeder, the rotary hoe, the scuffler, and unlike Roger, we do have a seed cleaner. We have a big Conskill rotary cleaner that, you know, it'll do 1,500 bushels an hour, so it doesn't slow you down. It's got aspiration on it, and some years we don't need it. The crop's not dirty enough to justify setting up another auger to run through it. But on a year you've got, you know, some stuff in your grain, it will do a great job of taking, you know, probably 60-70% out of it. That's just a picture of some of the dairy cows. They have to be pastured. That's actually just a picture of us. That's 2 years ago. That's just that's our tined weeder. We have an airflow box on it that we use to put down some of our cover crops and underseed our clover and our grass seeds. That's just at the end of the row. Those are on solid seeded beans, and that's a farm that we knew we could get away with it. Just some farms seem to have more weed pressure than others. So I just put this at the end, how to get there. Have a plan where you're going to go when you do become certified. And Hugh already went through the transition example, but I just put it down there how, I wouldn't say it's the easiest way, but I think it's a sort of forgiving way to get into it without transitioning with a crop, is to plan on doing it when you have hay down. I think that's really the easiest way to go into it. And I think too, hay gets overlooked right now. We're all talking about corn and beans, but this is good hay country up here. And hay the last couple of years has been a good cash crop. So the transition right now with hay I don't think is a bad thing. So I just put this down. So if you were to plant barley this year, I just put spray or not spray for weeds in June, okay? So you take June 2013 as your start of your transition year, okay? So then you're in hay in 14, you're in hay in 15. Then you can plant corn the next year. I'm just using corn as an example, because the harvest date of the corn is going to be past your transition date. So you technically only, if you don't like hay, you'd only have to be in hay for 2 years, but it would get you certified. And like you said too, you need to make your arrangements before that to get your farm certified and start the transition period. But that will get you into a certified organic program. So that's all I have. I know it's the end of the day. Everybody's looking out the window, and I'll take any questions. Yeah, Hugh.
One question, a couple comments have come up today about using a rotary hoe with stones or organic farming and tillage on hills. Wondering if you got any experience with hills and stones?
Well, we've had to plant some fields on a different angles than we normally would. Like if there's a natural side slope, we're maybe planting the short way for scuffler reasons. We're sort of a little bit behind the 8 ball. We're just going to auto steer this year, and we're going to a 12-row scuffler on our bigger tractor. We got a lot of level fields this year that are certified. So we have stones, and we just run a John Deere 30-foot rotary hoe, and we keep a spare one around for parts. If we break a wheel, we don't spend too much time. We just change it, get the job done, and then we'll work on it on a wet day. But I would say, as far as our limitations, and I guess it was you that said that too, there was a question about the land. Some fields don't work well, and we keep some fields in permanent hay, basically, and they only get broke if they run out. So we try to keep our best tiled, productive land in crop production. So.
When you have your land certified organic, do you keep it organic, or do you transition into conventional if we have weed pressure? Or?
We have taken, over the years, we have taken a couple farms out, partly for distance issues like traveling. Everybody's used to traveling now for land, but probably anything more than 10 miles away will run conventional just because of the trips over the field. I'm not sure.